Hey everyone, it's Nightharrow here, and today we're going to break Dragonbane. So for those who don't know, Dragonbane can be an incredibly punishing and difficult system, especially when you're first starting out and you only have one heroic feat. And I found this out over the weekend where I almost TPK'd, and so I started thinking about ways, how can we fix this? How can we prevent this from happening? And I came up with a handful of ways, and today I'm going to show you the one I picked that I thought was the best. The main one that occurred to me is that we need a bigger tank. We need a better tank, and the whole idea with being a tank is your job is to draw aggro to you as opposed to the rest of the party, and you need to be able to tank a decent amount of damage, and this build does that incredibly well. So let's just go ahead and start talking about it. A couple of notes here. We're going to have damage reduction up to 8, so the first 8 points of damage we take in most situations is going to be completely negated, and that provides our survivability. And then the other thing is that being able to output a lot of damage. What we want to do is be in the GM's face, in the monster's face, and making them have to deal with us, whether that is actively defending or because we're doing so much damage that to not defend is a really bad idea. Even if they are actively defending much of the time, which they will, it still prevents them from attacking other parties or doing other things that could injure the rest of our party. And so that's really good. That's really useful utility for us. And the other thing is being able to output a bunch of damage. So if we do have an opportunity where a monster did decide to attack, if the GM did decide to do that with a boss or whatever, we want to punish them for that. And we want to punish them by doing a lot of damage. So let's go ahead and start off, and we'll just talk about kin. And I recommend personally going with the mallard. Mallard have the besides their ability to swim very well, which is fun and thematic, and besides the fact that a mallard is cute and cuddly, mallards have the ill-tempered ability, the heroic ability. And what this allows them to do is to take a status effect of being angry, and then that gives them a boon on a particular roll. This is really useful because we can use this inside of combat and outside of combat. So it just applies very broadly. Obviously, we will have a bane on intelligence rolls after that, at least until we rest and calm down and aren't so angry. But this is an incredibly useful ability, and it can apply in a lot of places. Now, if you want to min-max and you're really worried about combat, your GM's pretty harsh and what have you, then I would go with a wolfkin over a mallard. If you like one of these races over the other, just go with that one. But wolfkin, what their hunting instincts allows them to do is you can basically mark a target, and that could be by scent, some target that you've encountered before, or it can just be by sight. So if you're about to go into combat, or if you are already in combat, it does take an action to do this. But what it allows you to do is pick a target. You spend 3 willpower points, similarly with the mallard ability, by the way. And then after that, on that one marked target, which you're typically going to pick whatever the biggest, baddest thing is, you can spend 1 additional willpower point to get a boon on a particular roll. So this ability for the wolfkin starts off, and it's like, okay, it's very similar to all the other abilities. Different, but very similar. But the idea here is that especially if you have a target with a lot of HP or that you're really concerned about, getting those boons on attack rolls, it only costs 1 willpower point after that. And so you could spend 6 willpower points to get 3 boons, or 7 to get 4. So when you compare that to other abilities, if you wanted to just use most of your willpower points in one particular fight, then you're looking at spending maybe 9. That would give you 6 boons on attack rolls, which is crazy. And the thing that is so nice about that is you got to think about with boons is that, anytime you roll a d20, there's a 5% chance of getting a critical. So you're doubling your chances of getting a critical by being able to roll 2 dice. And if you do get a critical and you're doing a bunch of damage, it's going to be pretty scary. And again, the idea with this build is that we're in the GM's face, we're in the monster's face, and we're making them have to deal with us. And so they can't be attacking our allies, they can't be doing the monster actions, they need to be defending, they need to be playing smart, and that's what we're designed to do. Any other kin you decide to choose would also be fine. The only thing is, like, a halfling really doesn't make sense with this particular build today because you're not going to be evading a whole lot, and that's what halflings give you a bonus to. Now, for our profession, we are going to choose a knight, and we're choosing a knight for 2 reasons. One is their heroic ability is incredibly helpful. It's perfect for us. The other, and honestly, you could almost argue as much or maybe even more, the reason we're picking him is because they're starting gear. So what we want to choose is gear option, the first one, gear option 1, and that's going to give us full plate armor, so DR6, so 6 damage reduction, and then also a great helm, which is going to give us another 2 damage reduction. Now, those also give us banes on a lot of rolls, and so awareness for the helm, and then I think we have evade, acrobatics, and sneaking for our plate armor. I'll pop it up here. I'm sorry, I'm going off memory, but I think that's right. And so the idea here is that most of the time when we're just overland, we're traveling from point A to point B, we're not going to be wearing our great helm because we we don't want that Bane on awareness. For the evade and sneaking and everything else, we're just going to have to work around that. We'll talk about how to do that and mitigate those situations. But the damage reduction is huge. It's absolutely massive and allows us to be in there in the boss's face and tanking a lot of damage. And then we also get a shield with that, a small shield, which is nice. And then we have a choice of a broadsword or a Morningstar. Morningstar does a little bit extra damage, as it does, I believe, 2d8, and then the broadsword does 2d6. So a little bit difference in damage. The other thing is slashing and piercing. On the broadsword, we have a choice versus just bludgeoning on the Morningstar. I tend to favor the broadsword, but either is fine, and whatever is more thematic and fun for you, go for it. And then we get a bit of silver. Make sure that you grab a sling. Slings only cost 1 silver, and then stones, you can get them from wherever, so that we have some sort of ranged weapon. Not because we're going to use it 99.9% of the time, but just because you probably just want to have it. So make sure you grab it. Make sure you put it on your character sheet. You definitely want to have it. Now, moving on to heroic abilities, the creme de la creme, right? The thing that really makes us powerful. So we get Guardian from being a knight. Guardian, what that allows us to do is spend 3 willpower points, and it allows us to provoke or get in the way of a monster and make the monster or any enemy rather attack us as opposed to our ally who's adjacent to us. So this allows our party to be in melee with us and us to tank some of the damage for them. Now, I will note this is not a defense. It does not give you a defense, but it can make them attack you instead of your ally. And since we have that huge amount of damage reduction, it's what we really want to be doing, right? That's the whole point of being a tank. It's kind of a no-brainer. It's a great ability. Now, as we level up, we're going to get some other choices. Now, it can be tempting to want to take defensive abilities like defensive, which or shield block. So these allow you to defend for free and to get, bonuses on rolls and what have you. The reason I don't strongly recommend these, and I think they're a bit of a trap with this particular build, is what we want is to draw aggro from the GM, from the monster, from the boss or whatever. And the main way we're going to do that is by being a threat. Okay, yes, we can do it with our Guardian ability. If someone is next to us, that's really helpful. But the other way is to just threaten damage so much that the GM has to deal with us. And it also has the benefit of outputting a lot of damage. So in that case, what I would recommend is going with something potentially like Double Slash. Double Slash lets you hit 2 opponents with 1 attack roll. So remember that there's a potential situation where we could get a boon on that attack roll. Now, if you're a Wolfkin and you're trying to use this ability to hit 2 opponents, my personal opinion is that this shouldn't typically be allowed. There are some things that would give you a boon on that roll that I would allow. This one is not one of them. Maybe only giving you a boon against one of the targets or something else you could do, but usually would not allow that. But still with Double Slash, even without the extra boon from our Wolfkin ability, you can hit potentially 2 targets, okay? And our Mallard ability, I would argue that would give us a boon on this, and we are spending 3 willpower points to be able to do it. So in that case, we have a higher chance of critting. You could hit 2 targets, and you're threatening to do a massive amount of damage to those 2 targets. And again, those are going to eat up the actions of our opponents if they don't choose to actively defend, even if they are successful. So I think Double Slash is a great way to go. Another one would be Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayer, after we've already hit our opponent, we can choose to activate this ability so we don't waste it preemptively, and it'll do an extra d8 of damage. Again, threatening to do a bunch of damage, particularly to one target, especially if you're going the Wolfkin route. This can work incredibly well. GM's going to have to dodge that, right? Like, they're going to have to actively defend because they know you can output a massive amount of damage. And then probably the biggest, baddest thing you could choose here is going with Berserker. Berserker, you were definitely not going the defensive route here, but what this allows you to do is you become angry, and then you get a boon on all of your attack rolls after that. So you're just charging from point A to point B. Now, the drawback is that you can't actively defend, but honestly, we're typically not going to want to actively defend because we're going to want to let our armor do its job and soak up most of the damage. So the synergy here actually works quite well. And again, you're getting a boon on that attack. Later on, maybe you combine that with something like Double Slash, and now you're getting a boon on this attack that can hit 2 targets and can do just crazy amounts of damage. I think Berserker is a really strong option here, if a little bit high risk, high reward, because, it would be nice to be able to block in some situations. I will note with all these various abilities, I have not played, 2 years worth of Dragonbane, right? It hasn't been out that long. So it might be the situation that the more you play and the more the GM realizes you are a problem, that he starts to focus you, and some of these defensive abilities could be better than I'm giving them credit for. just something to keep in mind and something to maybe keep your options open for. For age, we are going to choose to be young. And the reason we're choosing to be young is because we want that extra agility. We want that extra constitution. We want to be able to take more hits, and we want to be able to move faster, as well as have a little bit better with our evade, since we're already getting a bane on that, and our acrobatics and so forth, since we're already getting a bane on some of those rolls in a lot of situations. For our stats, I think it's very tempting, and it does even suggest that you make strength your primary stat. I think that it is actually better to go with agility. If you want to go with strength, I don't think it's wrong. You'll probably get from a D4 extra damage to that D6, being able to max out the damage, but I think that we're doing okay on damage, honestly. And the thing is that skills are based on various stats. The only skills based on strength are weapon skills. And if we want to unlock more heroic abilities, we need to get skills to 18, multiple skills. And do we really need 3-4 strength-based skills at 18, all of our melee weapon skills? I don't think so. I think we need probably 2 at the most, and honestly 1 primarily. So I don't think we want strength, because unlocking those heroic abilities is just way too important. So that's why I say agility. I would say strength would be next. Agility is also going to give us extra speed, which can be very useful so that we can get into melee range, because we're really not going to be designed at all for being at range. So we really want to be able to get into melee. If we can't get there the first turn, that's why being a wolfkin is nice. We can choose a target, and it's not a big deal that we weren't able to do anything. We already kind of wanted to choose our target before we did that anyways. And then our third ability here, it's hard. I would say either Constitution or Will. So we need extra willpower points to power all the stuff we can do. So every class, willpower is always high up there. I would probably choose Constitution and then Will as my 4th choice. And then you're just going to dump into Intelligence and Charisma. Hopefully those don't work out too bad for you. I will note, having a low Constitution is not going to be the end of the world. Neither would having a low Strength on this build. The main thing is I would strongly recommend probably going with a decently high agility. Now for skills. So we have to choose 6 of these out of the 8 skills here. So we're going to choose most of these. So I'm going to run through the list of most of them and just kind of explain why you might want to pick them. So I think picking hammers or swords, I think it would be totally fine to only pick one of those. If we want a secondary weapon, we would probably really want a 2-handed weapon. So pick both of them if you want, but otherwise it's totally fine to just pick one of them and spend the rest of your skill points elsewhere. Beast lore. Beast lore, we're going to be up in the face of monsters, and there's a lot of situations where this could be helpful. That's why we might want to pick that. Riding and spears. So spears are how you use lances. They use the spear ability, and riding can be very helpful for us. Our mount can potentially soak up some damage for us, make us even tankier when we're fighting bigger monsters later on in the game. That's why I like riding and spears, so that we don't have to level them up from scratch. If you want to go a little bit more charisma focused, maybe go the paladin route, then something like persuasion could be a good choice there. Pretty self-explanatory. And then myths and legends. Hopefully you have somebody else in your party who's more the myths and legends person. But again, you have to take most of these skills, so it can't hurt to be able to help out a bit with that, even if they are the primary person. And then after that, we have 2 choices we can pick from anything. And we have more than 2 that we probably want to choose. So if you went middle-aged, that would also be totally fine, so that you had a couple more skill choices, but I still think young is probably the way to go. So I would recommend going with acrobatics and evade. And the reason for that is wearing plate armor, we're going to get banes on both of those rolls. So we're getting banes on acrobatics, evade, and then sneaking by wearing plate armor. So if that skill is high enough, is the idea here, then we won't have to worry about the fact that we're getting a bane on it. So acrobatics, if we're having a climb, that's going to be useful there. It's not just about running and jumping. There might be a situation where we need to climb up. We don't have to strip out of our armor and then put it on at the top. Like, the GM's probably going to punish you for that. And then the other one is evade. Evade is how you dodge attacks, but it's also used in other situations, and it can be to avoid monster attacks and what have you. And so that's why we want a decent evade, so that we can't get pinned down very easily. And so that's why I chose evade here. My third option, and potentially if you wanted to swap out one of these skills and just be like, you know what, I'm not very good at climbing, or whatever it happens to be. Maybe you've got a rope, somebody else goes first, they throw down the rope. That will give you a boon, so those will cancel out at least, and you can roll against the default. But my third option here would be to go with a 2-handed weapon of some sort, and that's how we can get that 2d10 worth of damage. pick your weapon of choice. We'll talk more about some of the heroic abilities and why you might want to choose a slashing weapon, but it's really whatever you like, and it's thematically appropriate, in which case you would obviously drop the shield. Other things that could be very good is awareness. Awareness is always good, so that you can be, catch things before they happen, and then being able to sneak is also always useful for everybody to have. And again, we're going to have a bane on those rolls. You're not probably going to choose awareness and sneaking. You could, but I think you probably won't. Instead, you'll choose to level those up kind of the old-fashioned way as you go along through play. And I think that's it. I think that's everything we're going to cover here. You have other options. You need to choose your memento, your weakness, and a few other things, but the base build here, as far as the mechanics, is here. And I honestly think it's incredibly strong and enough that it's really going to do what you want it to do in Dragonbane and really help keep your party alive. If you give this build a shot and you want to let me know how it is, please do so. Drop it down in the comments below. If you're interested in more builds like this, I'm going to be doing some more guides on various builds. I'm going to do a rogue. We're going to do some straight DPS, some other, healer builds and what have you. So hit the subscribe button and you can catch me in the next one. So anyways, appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next time.